Hi, welcome to class today. This week for Chapter 9, we're going to talk about infant and toddler social and emotional development. Excuse me. Looking at coursework page here, Chapter 8 quiz due tonight. Interviewing child care providers also due tonight at midnight. If you have questions or need help, please let me know. I've got people here, child care providers here at the Nest who are willing to be interviewed. Don't have to do face-to-face. You could probably do a phone conversation or even a Zoom. So let me know if you need some help with that. Okay. Looking ahead in a couple weeks, midterm is a couple weeks away. And so we've got a couple things coming up due during midterm week. 3 assignments, actually, regular quiz. We have this thing here called Building Trust and Autonomy in Childcare Settings. That is where you're looking at a couple different schedules from infant care programs. So that could be daycares, it could be the campus kids here, it could be other kiddie college here at the in Fort Yates or wherever you might be located. Looking at several different schedules. So all you have to do is just ask them for a schedule. Say this is an assignment for our class. Look at a schedule, get a schedule, look at their schedule, and look and see what activities might be similar during each of those schedules. Here it gives example napping feed time. Is there activity time, play time? What does that kind of look like? So list strategies that caregivers can use to build a sense of trust and autonomy during those courses. Now we're going to talk about trust and autonomy a little bit today. So if you're not sure what those are, hopefully by the end of today or the end of the video, you will understand that a little bit more. Okay. The other thing then looking at midterm is the presentation, which I'm having most classes do. So if you have me for another class, then you know that this is an assignment in there as well. Any topic, any content, information that we've covered during the first half of the semester, pull it out of the book, finding the information online, asking me for it, pulling off PowerPoints. Doesn't matter what topic you do, just make sure it's connected to our stages of child development here in this class. So looking specifically in terms of what kind of presentation that I've talked about before in our other classes, you can come to class and give a presentation, stand up, give a speech. Basically, you can do that same thing through Zoom if you prefer. You can create a video and share that with me where you're doing the same thing, where you are like giving a speech and sharing information. You can create a PowerPoint and do a voiceover on that PowerPoint. There's a ton of options that you can do to share or create this presentation. The ones I listed, you're not limited to those. And so it's up to you how you do this presentation. But you have to present that information to me. It doesn't have to be long. We're talking maybe 10, 15 minutes. It's not a real long presentation, but just picking a topic, exploring it a little bit more. And that topic is of your choice. So if you need help, you have questions, please reach out and let me know. Any assignments, remember, from the first half of this semester that you have not completed yet need to be done by midterm. That is 2 weeks away, the end of midterm week, so March 4th. Today's February 16th, though it doesn't seem like we should be close to midterm already, but we are getting there rather quickly. Okay, so please reach out to me if you need help. If you have questions, whatever you need help with, I'm here. Call, email, text, stop by, schedule a Zoom session, whatever it is. So please reach out to me if you need some help. All right, so the chapter for today talks about social and emotional development in infants and toddlers. And so this is something that we can really work to help children, especially social development. If they're a child, infant or toddler that is not around a lot of other children at home, this is a good opportunity for them to learn some of those skills. So the first thing we talk about, and if we think of some of the theories that we've talked about, in Erickson's theory, he talks about trust versus mistrust, and it's a struggle or a central struggle for infants and toddlers to do that. This is not just talking about people, trusting people or mistrusting people, but it's talking about everything that that infants and toddlers do. Do they trust this to happen? Do they trust themselves? Excuse me. So if you talk about balance, for example, in terms of balancing for walking and crawling and all those components, children have to have a sense of trust, right? In terms of like taking first steps, they have to trust that they're going to be able to balance and do that. For example, if they don't have that trust, then that is a mistrust component that they have, and they're going to stay with crawling or whatever that might look like. So trust versus mistrust is something that is constantly happening within infants and toddlers in terms of growth and development. It's also there in terms of people, right? Trust versus mistrust components. So there's a lot of that happening in the first several years for children. Right? Attachment is an important piece of emotional and social development as well. We talk a lot about, or have talked a lot about that. Infants and children need a secure attachment to a positive role model, a positive caregiver, a caring caregiver. Okay, so this attachment piece is the process of forming physical bonds and emotional bonds with other people. Okay, they're primary caregivers, okay, which would be people in their families, but also if there's others outside of their family that are caregivers as well. So the emotional bonds then are something that we can start to work on as teachers with or providers with these young children. All right, so here are some stages of attachment in infants. Okay, so in interest in all people right away. Infants have an interest in everything, and even toddlers to some extent. Of all people that might come into contact with them or they might be around. An intense preference then shifts from all interests in people to mostly familiar caregivers, okay, or family people that are closer to them and spend more time with them. They pick up that stranger anxiety, okay, in terms of, I don't know this person, that makes me nervous, I'm worried about that. And then comes the next stage of that is that separation anxiety, okay, where if an infant, a toddler has to be separated from their primary caregiver or a familiar caregiver, they have that anxiety, that worry, that you're crying, that types of things where they're not comfortable with that. Okay, so it's very common across all cultures, but the intensity of that depends on family beliefs, cultural beliefs, community beliefs amongst that. Okay? But those are the stages that Mobley talks about. So there's some patterns of attachment that we can look at as well here, involving a series of stressful situations based on stranger and separation anxiety. Okay, so here we're looking at the Ainsworth strange situation procedure. So we're looking at these different patterns. A child with a parent of attachment that is obviously very strong. The child alone in terms of how a child relates to being by themselves. A child with a stranger, right? And then a child reunited with their parents. So how are the children reacting in these situations? Okay, with a familiar face, a parent, a family member, a caregiver, alone, stranger, and then reunited with that caregiver again. So children have to learn how to react or act in these different situations. For example, the stranger piece could be something come into play in a daycare setting or a childcare setting with new people at work, parents dropping off, other children, those types of components. Okay. So some other patterns of attachment, we have secure attachment, right? So joyous reunion with parent or with caregiver after some kind of a stress. Maybe they're alone, maybe they're with a stranger, some of those components there. So they have a joyous reunion after some kind of stressful event. So likely to be popular and very friendly with kids when this takes place. We have the insecure or avoidant attachment. Okay, so ignores or avoids parent or caregiver on reunion. Okay, so these are for maybe aggressive or impulsive kids that have less of a secure attachment pattern. They're not maybe they're not comfortable, and maybe there's some other I don't want to say issues, but concerns from that child with maybe their caregiver or their parent that makes them, ignore or avoid that reunion piece. Okay. We also then have that insecure or ambivalent attachment. So this child will typically alternate between being very clingy or the secure component and rejecting or the insecure avoidant attachment on the reunion. Okay, this might have to do with temperament. The child is more likely shy or whiny. So things can be volatile is not the right word, but they can be different each time depending on the child's mood or interaction or temperament. Excuse me. And then the last one to talk about is a disorganized pattern of attachment, where there is some confusion and there is no maybe rhyme or reason to why a child may or may not switch between a secure attachment or insecure avoidant attachment, or any of those components. So oftentimes these children are more likely to be more aggressive in terms of like their behavior and social or emotional interactions, in even possibly hostile to what the parent or caregiver might be trying to do in a variety of situations. So we have disorganized, insecure, ambivalent, insecure, avoidant, and secure patterns of attachment that children typically follow. So this is, again, an average probably, or it is an average in cultures in terms of distribution of patterns. So 70% of infants and toddlers have that secure attachment piece with their parent or their primary caregiver. 20 to 25% do the insecure avoidant, and then 5 to 10% do the insecure ambivalent attachment. So about 30%, there's I don't want to say issues, but there's some stuff going on there with those patterns of attachment that children might struggle with a little bit. But 70% of the time, you're going to have that secure attachment piece to be working with. Of course, there are different situations and different things happen in terms of like different cultural backgrounds or biases. So infants that are rarely left alone show ambivalent patterns in the attachment component. So infants often left alone typically show avoidance patterns. So if we're talking about infants in terms of always in somebody's arms, always around others, their caregivers, they're looking at that ambivalent component. Okay. Infants that are often left alone then show the avoidant component. Maybe they're left in their rooms, they're sleeping in their own room, they're crying. In terms of the crying, the parents let them kind of cry it out, unless it's something that for hunger or some of those components. So research does talk about how some of those caregiving strategies can lead to some of that ambivalent or avoidant patterns in attachment. Again, parenting influences secure attachment. So if you have a warm, caring parenting influence, plus some physical contact and a high responsiveness, that leads to more of that secure attachment component. Okay, the specific warm responses behaviors, of course, will vary from culture to culture and family to family, but the more contact, connectedness, and warmth and caringness with that primary caregiver and even a secondary caregiver builds that secure attachment component, which is mostly what we want to have children have. Okay, or children have. Strong parent and infant bonds form when children have severe disabilities, even when children have severe disabilities, which makes sense and is common sense. Disabilities can make things a little bit more difficult, of course, sometimes for parents to be responsive, to be more warm and caring, because sometimes there's a lot more work involved with with disabilities, right? So, for example, brain damage can lead to atypical and adverse crying. So, more crying that can be difficult to manage for parents sometimes, and may lead to less responsiveness, and some of those components. But some adult conditions make attachment more difficult, right? Like postpartum depression, for example, for mothers, regular depression, there might be some substance abuse, poverty, maybe some, parents or family members have to work multiple jobs. So it's not just that it's something on the child's end because of like disabilities or even for connectedness, but it could be things on the adult end as well that make it difficult for students or for children to have that warm attachment component. Attachment interventions focus on warmth and responsiveness are very effective. Okay? We have to look at the cultural context or be culturally neutral to ensure these are not biased one way or another, if that makes sense. But in terms of attachment interventions, those can include a variety of things. Some examples of the interventions it can include like a parent support group where families share ideas and thoughts and things that they do in terms of stuff with their children, especially those that might have some disabilities. Also do things such as helping family members read signs or signals of their babies and respond to them in positive ways, because maybe that sometimes as parents, we just don't know, some of those things that might be happening, and somebody that has experience working with infants or children with disabilities can help us figure some of those components out. So several options in terms of interventions for those families. Okay. Infant and toddler care attachment, talking about in terms of research, and it's kind of cloudy or varied, right? Some find that most infants in childcare have secure attachments. Others find that children who begin childcare as infants are more likely to have insecure attachments and be aggressive in school, but the quality of care makes a big difference. And I would agree with this last statement here in terms of quality of care makes a big difference. And so if you have a child that starts a childcare as an infant, and that is a high quality childcare, there's a very secure attachment components within that childcare system, you're probably not going to have insecure attachments for those children as long as they're getting that secure attachment component at home too. So quality of everything makes a big difference, and makes things go very good. Okay, so they're talking about maybe new research or a way to study attachment relationships. It can be difficult, of course, to study attachment relationships with infants and toddlers because of the lack of communication that we have from them. So obviously, some work to do in that area if it can be done. So next thing we talk about here is the social brain and the attachment of that. So fused form face area becomes highly activated when an infant sees a human face. So this area in the brain. So that's a good thing, right? That brain area becomes active and engaged. It means it's like excited and activated. So seeing human faces is important for the infants. The superior temporal sulcus is active when processing information about eyes. Right? And so looking at the human face, looking specifically at the eyes, this part of the brain then becomes active and helps to process information. What they're processing, what's happening exactly, and not obviously sure, but there's that joint attention piece there, basically meaning that it's eye-to-eye contact from the caregiver or the other human face with the child. So they do notice that with children with autism, do not have that similar activity within that brain area. Okay. So next thing to talk about then is the autonomy of toddlers. Okay. So Erickson in his theory there talks about autonomy versus shame and doubt. Okay. So a feeling of uniqueness and separation from parents. Okay. there's cultural variations in this this development, or this affect of development. Okay, so some cultures discourage autonomy. Okay, autonomy, if you remember, is the kind of the me component. Okay, discovering me, the me. Let's get another good way to explain that. It's very. We'll talk a minute here about egocentrism. And so it's really about, autonomy of toddlers is them doing things themselves, branching out almost a little bit, and kind of being independent, so to say. So like I said, some cultures discourage that. Okay, some emphasize more control and restraint than just go do whatever type thing. Some encourage interdependence, and some encourage self-sufficiency. So it varies amongst families, it varies amongst cultures, varies amongst communities. But it's important that we do set limits for children or for toddlers as they begin to explore this autonomy. Okay, they explore and learn and develop different things about themselves and amongst themselves. So there's got to be some consequences within that frame of autonomy as well. Okay, because they have to learn some of those components. It gives some examples in the book, about for a toddler with a pleasant, good temperament that all of a sudden start saying no to everything, and so that's a change in them, and they're trying to do things themselves, or a toddler trying to dress themselves and they do things incorrectly. So not that there's like bad consequences for that, but you have to help them through some of those processes and some of those experiences in terms of becoming autonomous. So, temperament, I think we've talked about before, but temperament plays a big role in toddlers and children. But as they grow and develop, seeing how that temperament might be adjusted to some things, how they might change it. Much of it is inborn in terms of the temperament, and so it's something to pay attention to in terms of how we work with children. But these are kind of a variety of temperaments that infants or that toddlers could have here, and from active and bold, difficult, easy, fearful, shy, slow to warm up, all the way up to timid. And so a lot of these, like I said, many are inborn, but some you can develop some of these as well as children work to get as they become older. Children of all temperaments become securely attached to their parents at exactly the same rate, okay, as long as the parents are warm and responsive. Okay? So there needs to be a good fit, so to say. So if you have a child with one of these temperaments, you're going to adjust as a parent. You're going to adjust and shift a little bit in terms of how you work with them. The difficult child is of course a lot different than the easy child in terms of what you might do, how you might interact with them, but they have that same secure attachment component as long as parents are warm and responsive. So it doesn't matter the temperament if you are cold and unresponsive to that toddler. That's not going to be a good fit, and that secure attachment is not going to take place. So it doesn't matter if a child is difficult temperament, they're still going to have that opportunity for that secure attachment. Some trends can be observed with specific cultural groups. And so there's some biological basis of temperament, but then also there is a lot of cultural influence in terms of values that influence a temperament of a child. Okay, so example here, a fussy child may fare well in a dangerous environment because of their ability to sense and to react to some of those components. Somebody that is very shy or a child that is very shy might not react at all and say anything at all and not bring attention to that something happening in a dangerous environment, for example. But the culture, the community, the family, all those components, the environment can play a role into the temperament component. Okay. So positive, pleasant temperament is associated with brain activity in the left frontal lobe, whereas the slow to warm up or wary temperaments, shy temperaments are associated with the activity in the right frontal lobe. So it's very interesting that even temperament has different areas of the brain that kind of control it or are activated by it. So the brain is an amazing, interesting organ in our body, and it's people still do not. We still do not fully understand the abilities and the power, I guess, so to say, of the brain. But it is controlled within the brain, of course, and different parts of the brain react based upon different ways or different types of temperament. So early emotions for infants and toddlers. So infants make certain facial contortions when angry and others when surprised. So the facial reactions of infants can help us maybe determine what they're feeling, what's happening with them. Infants can also distinguish some facial expressions days after birth. Okay, by 6 months they can use touch or sound to determine emotional intent, and by 10 months can differentiate similar expressions that represent different emotions. So children or infants are able to tell those expressions on our faces or other people's faces very quickly, up to 10 months potentially and be able to, know what's happening using touch to determine things. So it's a very, very early and quick development of emotions. Again, they rely on contextual clues to guide their own feelings. Okay, so they might feel less distress when the mother has an encouraging, positive expression that makes them feel good, makes them feel calm. Infants can develop simple emotional regulation skills early, but may still lose control if they don't have some of those contextual components around them to make them feel more secure. And of course, emotions may be influenced by the attachment relationships they have with others. So you have securely attached infants may express more joy, may express less anger because of that secure attachment with another caregiver or another adult. So some research does suggest that basic human emotions are universal, but there are some cultural differences in how and when emotions are expressed. Again, within ethnic cultures, different parts of the country, within families. And so there can be variations of emotional expression within families as well. So it just depends a little bit on the makeup, the biology, the DNA of us as people and children, and then also how their environment that they're living in does certain things. For example, some cultures avoid outward expressions of anger. Some allow anger but discourage shame. Not all cultures talk it out. Some talk it out. So, if you're dealing with infants and toddlers in a variety of situations, if a family or certain cultures don't talk about things, and you're trying to force a child to talk about things, that's going to be something new and different, and maybe difficult for that child. And so it's something to kind of be aware of during confrontation or issues that might come up in your classroom. Again, it talks about the brain here and emotions. The occipital temporal region of the brain is active when infants view angry faces or hear angry voices. And the anterior cingulate gyrus, or the frontal lobe, is active for emotional control. And so it's a very important component for children as well as us as adults in terms of that frontal lobe to have the emotional control of our emotions and how we react and act to certain situations. So children are developing that as they grow and develop. And so if that's damaged or if that is not activated very much, then that is there's going to be less emotional control for them as they turn into they get a little bit older and as well as continue into adults. Egocentrism, I've talked about this before in a variety of classes, but when children are often egocentric, meaning that they think their needs are the most important ones, and they don't often recognize that or even care that other children or other people have different feelings or different needs. And so it takes some time for them to learn that and to understand that it's not just about what I believe in or what I do, that there's others that might feel differently or have some different needs around them. So young children can be empathetic. They're aware of things, they're kind, they're sociable, they're concerned about others, maybe when they're hurt. And so that can be a great thing, but that's also something that we need to work on with children, to teach them and to help them understand what being empathetic is like. So modeling is a great way to teach children about empathy. And so even if it's infants and toddlers, the more they see, the more they will understand, the more they will probably learn about how to be empathetic or towards others. So infants and toddlers with disabilities is the last piece here, but when you have infants and toddlers with disabilities, these are some components in terms of strategies to support their development. So nurturing, responsive care is important. Having quiet, safe, and consistent environments for learning, for growing, for developing. If children are coming to us in a daycare or a childcare setting, we want to create these environments. It can be loud in childcare and daycare centers, which is fine, but you got to have some quiet, safe environments as well, as you're going to have some children that prefer that and need that over that loudness that often takes place. Positive interactions with peers is important, and so creating those opportunities for positive interactions, and then of course modeling positive affected social interactions ourselves with other children, so that they can see some of those types of social interactions and how they take place. Because some children with disabilities don't know how to have a positive social interaction. They don't know some of those social skills. So that's part of our job as teachers, providers, to help them understand that. Okay, and that's the end of the chapter. So social emotional skills are super important for young children. And it's important for us to help them with the development of those. So if you have questions about this chapter, please reach out to me and let me know. The quiz is due, of course, next Wednesday at midnight. I'm going to change the view here so you can see that. Looking at coursework. Chapter 8 quiz and the interviews are due tonight, and just Chapter 9 quiz due next Wednesday. Midterm in about 2 weeks. All missing assignments from the first part of the semester are due by the end of midterm week. So please reach out to me if you need questions and if you have questions or need help. I'm right here and willing to help you with whatever needs you have. Okay, thank you. Take care. Talk to you soon.